The studio lights were warm and forgiving, the kind designed to make even a bad morning feel gentle. They cast a soft glow over the pastel set, the sofa positioned just so, the coffee mugs angled for the camera, steam curling upward like a promise of comfort. Ricky Gervais slouched into his seat opposite Lorraine Kelly with his trademark half-smile, one leg crossed casually over the other, hands folded like he was settling in for a private joke only he knew the punchline to. The audience applauded on cue, a neat ripple of sound that made the room feel alive without being overwhelming. Ricky nodded at them, half grinning, half measuring, already scanning the room like he was daring it to bore him. Lorraine leaned in with her practiced warmth, the kind that felt effortless because it was built on years of doing this exact thing. She welcomed him back, complimented his jacket, teased him about being Britain's most unapologetic mouth, and the audience laughed easily. Ricky shot back with dry, self-aware quips, poking fun at his own reputation, making it clear he knew exactly how he was perceived and didn't lose sleep over it. The rhythm was familiar. Host sets up, guest swerves, laughter lands. It was breakfast television working exactly as designed. They talked about his latest project first, a safe opening. Ricky riffed on deadlines, budgets, and the absurdity of taking himself seriously. He joked about awards, pretending not to care while clearly enjoying the memory of winning them. Lorraine laughed along, nodding, letting him run just long enough before gently steering him back. The audience warmed to him, clapping at the right moments, relaxing into the sense that this was going to be one of those interviews, sharp, funny, a bit edgy but harmless. But underneath the banter, there was a tension that hadn't been there before. Ricky felt it, even if he didn't consciously name it. The world had changed since his last visit. He knew that. He could feel it in the way people laughed now, a fraction slower, as if checking themselves before committing. Lorraine felt it too. She'd done enough interviews lately to recognize the invisible line everyone was tiptoeing around, the one that shifted depending on who was watching and what was trending that morning. So, Lorraine said, tilting her head, voice light but deliberate, "You've always said comedy's about telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Ricky nodded, leaning back, eyes half-lidded. "Especially when it's uncomfortable," he replied. "Otherwise you're just reading out birthday cards." Laughter. Lorraine smiled, but she didn't move on. "But do you think," she continued, choosing her words carefully, "that with everything going on, comedians have a bit more responsibility now?" It was a soft question, wrapped in a smile, but Ricky felt the edge immediately. He raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift, and answered with his usual bluntness. "I think comedians have the same responsibility they've always had," he said. "Be funny. That's it." A few laughs rippled through the audience, but they were thinner this time. Lorraine nodded slowly, as if considering it. "But jokes land differently now, don't they?" she said. "People are more vocal about being hurt." Ricky shrugged, the movement exaggerated, theatrical. "People have always been hurt," he replied. "They just didn't have Wi-Fi." The audience laughed again, louder this time, relieved by the familiarity of his tone. Ricky leaned into it, warming to the reaction. "Being offended isn't a superpower," he added. "It's just a feeling." Lorraine chuckled, but her smile tightened just a fraction. She leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on her knees, maintaining eye contact. "I get that," she said, "but when you've got a platform like yours, words carry weight. Don't you think that matters?" The room felt smaller suddenly. The cameras hummed softly, unnoticed but omnipresent. Ricky tapped his fingers on his knee, then leaned forward too, mirroring her posture. "I think intent matters," he said. "If I'm mocking power, hypocrisy, nonsense, that's fair game. If someone sees themselves in that and doesn't like it, that's not on me." There was a pause, not an awkward one yet, but a noticeable beat where the audience waited to see which way it would go. Lorraine nodded again, still calm. "But what about people who feel like they're always the punchline?" she asked. "Who feel like comedy keeps kicking them when they're already down?" Ricky exhaled a short laugh through his nose. "Comedy punches up," he said. "Or it should, but sometimes people decide they're down because it's safer than being laughed at." A few gasps mixed with laughter. Someone in the audience shifted in their seat. Ricky noticed and smiled, a spark of challenge in his eyes. He was in familiar territory now, the place where discomfort and humor overlapped, and he thrived there. Lorraine's voice stayed gentle, but it sharpened just enough to be heard. "But you can't deny," she said, "that some jokes reinforce things people are struggling with." Ricky tilted his head, considering, then shook it. I think giving jokes that much power is dangerous, he replied. They're jokes. If we start treating them like policy statements, we're in trouble. The audience response was uneven now, some laughter, some silence. Ricky felt the shift and pushed a little harder, his tone still joking but edged with something firmer. If comedy needs a permission slip, he said, it's dead. Lorraine's smile faltered for the briefest moment before she smoothed it back into place. She glanced at the camera, then back at Ricky. I'm not talking about permission, she said. I'm talking about empathy. The word hung there, heavier than any joke. Ricky's jaw tightened, just slightly. He leaned back again, folding his arms loosely, a defensive posture disguised as relaxation. Empathy doesn't mean silence, he said. Sometimes it means saying the thing no one wants to hear. The studio felt warmer now, the lights less forgiving. The audience sensed it too, the way the conversation had drifted from playful to pointed. Lorraine inhaled, preparing to respond, while Ricky watched her closely, ready for whatever came next. Somewhere off camera, a producer shifted, eyes flicking between the monitor and the set, aware that the easy morning chat had quietly turned into something sharper, something that might not fit neatly between weather updates and cooking segments. The air in the studio was charged now, and Lorraine Kelly's calm, polished demeanor had shifted to a firmness that few had seen before. Ricky Gervais, ever the provocateur, was leaning back in his chair, smirking just enough to suggest he was enjoying the tension. The audience, sensing a live wire moment, sat on the edge of their seats, unsure whether to laugh, gasp, or quietly brace themselves. The cameras lingered, capturing every flicker of expression, every subtle movement. This was no longer just a morning interview, it was a clash of wills, one that neither Lorraine nor Ricky had fully anticipated when the show's schedule was printed. Lorraine tried to regain control. Ricky, we're on a morning show. People tune in for something light, something to start their day. I don't think they came here for a debate about the ethics of comedy. Her voice was firm but measured, yet there was an edge that made even her most loyal viewers notice. Ricky tilted his head, as if hearing her for the first time. So you want me to water it down? He asked, a playful grin masking the growing intensity in his tone. Turn reality into a bedtime story. I don't do that. The audience reacted, some nervous laughter, some murmurs. Lorraine's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in unmistakable resolve. I'm asking you to respect the context of this show, she said, her voice deliberate, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Ricky's grin faltered for just a heartbeat before he laughed, a low, almost mocking sound. Respect the context. Lorraine, I'm respecting you. I just don't respect the idea that we need to censor life for comfort. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers tightening slightly. She had conducted thousands of interviews, handled celebrities known for their unpredictability, yet something about Ricky Gervais' combination of charm and audacity had rattled the room. She took a measured breath, leaning in slightly. Then perhaps this isn't the right platform for that kind of conversation, she said. Her voice was calm, but her words were definitive. There was no invitation, no wiggle room. Ricky froze for a split second, then straightened, the smirk returning to his face, but now it carried a sharper, almost defiant edge. Not the right platform, he repeated, voice carrying to the edges of the set. So, what, you're kicking me off? His tone was incredulous, teasing, but underneath it was a glint of challenge. The audience murmured. Someone coughed. The studio seemed smaller now, walls pressing in with the weight of anticipation. Lorraine didn't waver. Yes, she said simply. I think it's best if we end this segment. She gestured politely toward the off-camera producers. Security began to move subtly, appearing as if from nowhere, yet careful not to escalate. Ricky glanced at them, then back at Lorraine, still seated, still maintaining the composure of a seasoned host. The tension between them was palpable, a collision of principle, ego, and showmanship. Ricky chuckled softly, standing up, adjusting his jacket with a casual flair that belied the sharpness of the moment. Well, looks like I'm too spicy for breakfast television, he said, tossing a final wry glance at Lorraine. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. His tone carried that familiar Ricky Gervais mix of humor and provocation, leaving the room caught between amusement and disbelief. The producers moved closer, subtly guiding him toward the exit, their hands gentle but firm. Cameras followed, capturing the moment for the viewers at home who had already begun live tweeting, speculating, and debating the unfolding drama. Lorraine returned her attention to the camera, the practiced smile back in place, but her hands betrayed a subtle tension, fingers tapping lightly on the table as if to remind herself to remain composed. "Thank you for joining us," she said, voice steady, her eyes bright with control regained. "We'll be back after the break with our regular segment." Her words were professional, warm, polished, but there was an unmistakable undercurrent that something unusual had just occurred. Behind the scenes, assistants whispered, crew members exchanged glances, and producers reviewed monitors to make sure the broadcast had captured every second of the now legendary exchange. Backstage, Ricky laughed quietly to himself, still catching snippets of the dialogue replaying in his head. "Too spicy for breakfast TV," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. For him, it was a victory in its own chaotic way, a confirmation that he had pushed boundaries, provoked thought, and refused to compromise. For Lorraine, it was a lesson in balancing warmth with authority, charm with control, and humor with boundaries. Meanwhile, the clip had already started circulating online, a storm of reactions erupting. Across social media, fans of Ricky praised him for his unflinching honesty, celebrating his refusal to dilute his comedy. Critics argued that he had crossed a line, asserting that morning television demanded a different kind of respect. News outlets ran side-by-side screenshots of the tension, analyzing every eyebrow raise, every pause, every flicker of expression. By lunchtime, the debate had exploded into hashtags, trending topics, and opinion columns dissecting the ethics of comedy, context, and the responsibilities of public figures. Lorraine's office was quiet, the usual buzz of production staff replaced with a careful hush. She sat back in her chair, reflecting on the exchange. She had maintained professionalism, kept her composure, and ensured the safety and dignity of her show, but the incident left a lingering sense of intensity that would be felt for weeks. Ratings were already showing a spike, the clip proving irresistible to the public. She understood the paradox. Controversy drove attention, yet it also demanded careful handling to maintain credibility. Ricky, in a separate green room, was scribbling notes and ideas, energized rather than frustrated. To him, the altercation wasn't a failure, it was material, a real-time illustration of the tension between truth and comfort, comedy and caution. He imagined jokes forming in the air around him, playful yet pointed, ready for the next stage. He laughed aloud quietly, relishing the irony that a morning show, meant for light-hearted chatter, had produced something far more substantial, a genuine confrontation of ideas, raw and unfiltered. By evening, the incident had become a cultural talking point. Clips were shared millions of times, dissected on news channels, radio programs, and late-night shows. Memes began circulating, highlighting Ricky's smirk, Lorraine's calm resolve, and the absurdity of a morning TV clash escalating into national conversation. The public debated, argued, and laughed, some condemning, some cheering, and some simply marveling at the spectacle of two strong personalities refusing to yield. Lorraine and her team, despite the media frenzy, approached the aftermath with careful strategy. Press releases emphasized professionalism, a commitment to respectful dialogue, and the understanding that sometimes guests and hosts simply do not align. Ricky's team, on the other hand, leaned into the chaos, sharing clips with captions that hinted at rebellion and a refusal to compromise artistic integrity. Both sides understood the delicate balance between media narrative and public perception, and both were ready to navigate the waves it would generate. Ultimately, the moment became a lesson in the unpredictability of live television. It highlighted the fragile dance between humor and responsibility, charisma and control, freedom of expression and social expectation. For viewers, it was more than a clip, it was an event, a conversation starter, a moment of shared tension in living rooms across the country. The question lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling: had comedy crossed a line, or had the line moved without warning? And in that liminal space, between laughter and reflection, Ricky Gervais had walked off the set, leaving behind not just a story for the morning, but a narrative that would reverberate across media, social platforms, and dinner table conversations for weeks to come. The cameras cut wide, showing Lorraine alone on the sofa, professional and composed, a smile still present but tempered with the knowledge that live television had delivered something far bigger than anyone had planned, a moment that would be remembered, analyzed, and debated for months, perhaps even years. The day ended not with resolutions, but with questions, headlines, and a nation captivated by a single, unforgettable confrontation on an otherwise ordinary morning. The clash had ended, but the conversation had only just begun.